I work in the office of the Chief Technologist at HP Enterprise Services. HP Enterprise Services, that big organization that does a lot of outsourcing or has traditionally done a lot of outsourcing for the last number of years. Many people will remember the merger between HP and EDS. A lot of my colleagues come from that merger. My role in the office of the Chief Technologist is to talk to CIOs, senior execs about technology strategy, helping the CBAs and the Westpacs of the world, the Ozposts and the government agencies to really think about technology strategy, and to think about it, for my particular role is to think about what are the leading edge technologies. So disruptive technologies. So I'm working in the realms of 3D printing, wearables, the Internet of Things, bioinformatics. And how is that going to change the world of business? But clearly, the rest of the business world is talking about strategy around the big four: social, mobile, analytics, cloud, right? Everybody heard of those four. And then, of course, security underpinning the lot. So, but I'm talking to an audience, and you guys are really the importance of why I'm here. So who's in the room? So who works for a service integrator, a vendor, somebody who provides IT services for other companies? That's it? 1, 2, 3. Okay, don't be shy. This is the part of the show where you get to take part. So does everybody else work for a customer? You work for a customer IT department. Okay, so who's a technologist? Yep, yeah, half the crowd. Everybody else a business leader? Who's a business leader? Who would consider themselves a business leader? Who would consider themselves working in a business tower rather than in an IT tower? So you work in marketing or procurement or HR or, okay, great. All right. Who has got a messaging or an IM and presence technology already rolled out in their organization? It could be, and I'm not allowed to say the word, so it could be the predecessor to Skype for Business, or even the predecessor to the predecessor for Skype for Business. So communicator, I think I'm allowed to say communicator without getting a fine. So it could be communicator or even messenger before communicator, Skype for Business, etc. Who's actually got Skype for Business? Hands up, show of hands. How's that going for you? Is that good? Yeah, so far? 2 weeks. 2 weeks is good. All right. So this man didn't actually say this, but everybody quotes him as saying it. So I guess the apocryphal quote is instructional. And the instruction is, it's not about how smart you are. It's not about how strong you are. It's about how much you can adapt to change. He did actually say it, but he said it in a book that's about 120 pages, and we've just condensed it into a nice, easy to procure quote. So what are the changes that are actually happening in the world today? The first one is population growth. Back in the 80s, when I started my career, there were roughly 3.5 billion people on the planet. Now it's 7. So we've doubled in the 27 odd years that I've been working in IT. And what does that mean, actually? That's really the crux of the question. By 2030, we will have about 9 billion people on the planet. And if you listen to guys like Hans Rosling, who works for the World Health Organization, he does a lot of economic data, etc. You've probably seen a lot of TED Talks by him. He reckons that population is probably going to plateau at about 9 billion. But what does that mean? It means that we need to create 70% more food than we're creating today. It also means that energy is going to be more consumed. We're not reducing the amount of energy that we use. It means that it's not fair for my wife in the Western world to begrudge a housewife in the developing world a washing machine. Okay, so population growth, urbanization. This is a big one as well. I was in Shanghai in, when was I in Shanghai? In April, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I was staying in the JW Marriott. Anybody been to Shanghai? Okay, JW Marriott, it's an 80-story hotel. I was up on the 78th floor. And as far as the eye could see, peeking up above the smog, were skyscrapers. China is adding 60 million people in cities every year. They're building a Beijing every 2 months, effectively. They're turning on a coal-fired power station every 2 weeks. In June 2013, so 2 years ago today, pretty much, we tipped the scale where more people live in cities than live in the country. How does that affect us in terms of congestion? How does it affect us in terms of food logistics, getting food in and waste out? How does it change the way that we do work, the way that we transact with each other? The next one, of course, is globalization. A famous chart about the distribution of wealth from the 70s, I think 75, showed what they call a camel, right? 2 humps. So you had a peak of people earning less than $1 a day, and then a peak of people earning more than $10 a day. And if you look at that graph today, it's almost a dromedary, right? 1 hump, and it's shifted way over to the side, where we've actually reduced extreme poverty by a factor of 5 in the last 30 years. So there are still 1 billion people that live under $1 a day, but there are many, many more people who can afford air travel, who can afford holidays, who can afford cars, who can afford computers. And then the last big trend, and this is the one limitless resource, is the data explosion. Hands up who's got more than 128 meg of memory on their person right now. 128 megs, not much, okay? Sorry, 128 gig of memory on their person right now. Yep, okay, so that's half the room. I actually think that if you started counting your tablet and your laptop and your phone, we'd probably get close to maybe 200 terabytes in this room. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. It's phenomenal that my 17-year-old daughter can take an iPhone and can shoot a high-definition video and edit it on the iPhone and then publish it for millions to see in YouTube from her iPhone. A short 10 years ago, that would have cost me $5,000 in PC equipment to do that. And in fact, I couldn't get it out to the internet. I would have to burn it to DVD. So when you start thinking about the amount of data that we're creating and what that means, again, in terms of collaboration, the way we work, who we work with. Okay, so here's the ultimate point. Days are getting shorter. The numbers at the bottom there, 30 equals 2 to 3x. So in the last 30 years, we've doubled or tripled in most places in the developed and the developing world the time of commuting. Think about your own career. 20, 30 years ago, how long was your commute? Actually, 30 years ago, I was sailing in the Caribbean. My commute was rolling out of my bunk, and I was working. So that's not fair, though, really, is it? But when I think of when I was a teenager living in South Africa, my dad would literally get up, and it would be 5 minutes, and he'd be at work, at an office, not working from home. And now, 5 minutes would be pretty tough in Sydney. And I ride a motorbike, so I get to work shorter than if I drive a car. But who spends more than half an hour getting to the office a day? Okay, so that's most of the room. How about 45 minutes? How about an hour? Okay, who lives in Newcastle? That would be 2 hours. All right, and again, who works from home? At least 1 day a week, right? Why do we do that? 2 reasons. One is the commute. And the second one is we get work done, right? We're not interrupted by everybody. Those of you who do work from home more than 1 day a week, how does it change? Do you work more, or do you have more personal life? Or both? Both? Yep. Anybody else? We only got 2 people who work from home. Anybody else work from home? Work more. Yeah, you work more. Okay, so it's, and I find this as well. And let's be friends here, we're all friends, right? Who looks at email when they pick up their phone, their smartphone, first thing in the morning? Yeah, me too. And actually, if you listen to any of the science, they say that you should do 2 hours of work before you start looking at distractions, things like email and and tasks and things that you do. But we all do it, and we do it because we can, but also because it actually enables us and it empowers us, doesn't it? Okay. The second thing is, as we've seen, we work more. So 1 in 6 people work more than 49 hours a week. Who here works more than 49 hours a week? Be honest. Yeah, that's probably a little bit more than 1 in 6. Who works more than 60 hours a week? Okay, I do, often. It depends how you count it, I guess. If I count my travel, I can work a lot more than that. But yeah, 60 hours. Anybody work close on 80 hours a week? So no lawyers in the room? Okay. All right. Was that fair? We access more data. That 90% in 2 is 90% of the information on the internet has been created in the last 2 years. In fact, all of recorded history up to 2003 is saved every 12 hours. That's how much data we're saving and creating. And we haven't turned on the square kilometer array yet. The square kilometer array is going to be something like 2 terabits per second per antenna, and there's a square kilometer of antenna. It's going to be a phenomenal amount of data. And then we collaborate more as well. So that's 4.1 billion people on the planet have got email accounts. These are old figures. This is 2013. We send 191 billion emails a day. That's just my inbox. And 80% of that is spam. I have rules for that stuff. And 3.6 billion social media accounts. So 1.5 of those are Facebook. But then we've got, of course, we've got Twitter, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Pinterest, and all the others as well. And that's just the public social media accounts. I would argue that Yammer and SharePoint and Skype for Business are all social media. They're just internal social media, right? They're collaboration accounts. And what does that mean? It means that, one thing, we're doing more, accessing more, collaborating with more people in the same 24 hours a day. So the key to success here is to shorten the distance, to remove the latency between our communication and remove the latency between where we do work and where we record work. Yeah? So if I'm a salesperson, instead of taking all my orders in paper and then going to the office tonight and then putting all my orders into the system, if I can put my order into the system as I'm doing the sale, and if that system can actually be telling the inventory guys and the procurement guys, right, as I'm doing the sale where I'm working, then that's going to help us deal with all of this. Does that make sense? So it's about, the crux of this is about removing latency, and we'll see how that affects our strategy as we move on. Okay, so this is the CIO of the future. Actually, I would scrub that word future out. I would say this needs to be the CIO of today. These disruptive changes are not happening, they've happened. And we're seeing a disruption in the way that we do politics. It was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that the Arab Spring happened. And social media totally changed the way that the Middle East does politics. And you know, when was Barack Obama when did he first go into power? He used the power of social media to totally change the actual people who voted in America and getting him into power. Social media is changing the way that we travel. Who should be scared by Uber? The taxi companies? No, that disruption's already happened. Who should be scared by Uber is the car companies. Because already in LA, if I drive more than 10,000 miles a year, it's cheaper for me to use Uber, UberX, I think, or UberXL, than it is to own a car. And so if I'm Ford or GM, and I'm looking at these disruptions with things like driverless cars coming from Google, Tesla will be there soon, Audi's already mentioned one, and then services like Uber, it's going to totally change the way that we commute to work. once you start getting the Internet of Things in, once you start getting every streetlight, every car park talking to my calendar and to my car, it means it totally shifts the way of where I'm going to park. Because what will happen is my car will drop me off and it'll go and park somewhere cheap out in the suburbs. And then it knows my calendar and it'll come and pick me up. And it's going to take the most efficient route because it's talking to all the streetlights and all the other cars around at the same time. Now, that sounds like the stuff of Minority Report. It sounds like the stuff of science fiction. But that's probably in the 5 to 6 year time horizon when those things start changing the way that we commute and changing the way that we work. Okay, so here's the typical organization. They're still thinking blueprints. And my challenge is to people is to say we need to think beyond. We need to think beyond the technology. Skype for Business isn't just about the network, putting in the servers, hooking people up to wired or wireless headsets, and then saying, go for gold, right? We need to think beyond the technology. We need to think beyond the conversation. It's not just about connecting people so they can have a chat. We've had technology that can do that for decades. Actually, for almost a century. Alexander Graham Bell came up with the telephone back in 1900-something, right? So it's not just about getting people to talk to each other. And we need to think beyond our company. I think whenever I talk to people about technology like Skype for Business, it's very introspective. Oh, we've put it in, and I've seen some charts here today. 60% of our road warriors use it, and 70% of our managers use it, and the call center don't use it so much. And it's all very introspective. And my question is, what about your partners? Why aren't you talking Skype for Business with your partners? Why can't I just see the presence of somebody who I deal with in the industry, and then just, if they're green, have a video chat with them, instead of having to send them a meeting request and going and having a meeting and everything else, right? And I would argue, there was a question earlier where somebody said, I thought collaboration was all about happening in the moment. And no, I don't think it is. I think it's about giving you the tools to control the moment. I have a very strict rule about my inbox. I have inbox 0 at the end of every day. And I get between 120 and 160 emails a day, typically. I get to inbox 0 every day because my inbox is not my to-do list. I have a to-do list that is my to-do list, and I actually schedule tasks. And I schedule meetings. I block out my lunch every day. So people, and it means that my I am presence goes red, and it's blocked out in my calendar, and people can't put a meeting in it. Why do I do that? Because I'm managing my time. We get to manage our time now with these tools. So we need to think beyond the conversation and beyond the company. Don't you like that cartoon? I love that cartoon. Who knows a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old that's like that? Right? They all push the magazines and they go, this is a crap magazine. It doesn't interact with me like my iPad does. Okay, so the first part of the strategy is to think about the customer experience. If we look at the most successful companies today, the Facebooks, the Apples, the Amazons, what is the common thread amongst all of them? Because it's not technology. Apple's got a very closed ecosystem. Amazon's got a very open ecosystem. And it's not design. Craigslist has got an awful design, but it's really successful. So what is the common thread? And the common thread is it's about user experience. It's about providing value to the user. Unfortunately, most of our organizations are a little bit like this.
Are you sharing, Sharon?
Yes. You can't see it? That's weird. Just wait. It'll show up in a second.
Well, I'd love to be able to give you some good news. We're not in say this time, unfortunately.
Dave? Dave, are you still there? Dave?
We've had some issues.
Now can you hear me? Now can you hear me? Now can you hear me? Dave?
So what I'm going to do is just take out the video and send the slides that we need.
I need to jump to another call in a sec. Thanks.
It's coming. Don't log off. Don't log off. I'm just going to send it to everyone individually.
Sharon, I'm still not getting the file. I don't know why I was even added to this meeting.
Okay, who's got a Skype for Business network that operates something like that? No, nobody has. Nobody's had a call like that. Who has done the obligatory 15 minutes at the beginning of a web conference to set everything up and get the projector working? And yep, I mean let's be real, right? That's the experience of where we're at. So customer experience is key, and that doesn't take away from the technology, right? Because it's about having the right network and having the right network switches and using things that are optimized for Skype for Business or the predecessor to Skype for Business or whatever collaboration tool you use to give that user experience. But it's about the user experience, it's not about the network. Yep. Okay, so here's a little bit of a recent chart on what devices people actually use. Turns out that they don't use PCs so much anymore. Who's got a tablet in the room? Right, yep. Who's got a smartphone? Who hasn't got a smartphone? Right, who's got a bigger than 5-inch smartphone? Who's got a nice big Galaxy S3 or a big Windows phone? Yep. And those people with the big phones, have you done away with your tablet? No, you're still using the tablet as well? Who's using their PC less? Yeah, I am. If I travel, often I can do pretty much everything I need to do, including presentations, including collaboration, including editing documents, on my tablet. And so my usage is probably different, but you can see the chart. PC still, our data shows that PCs still rule the middle of the day, right? But smartphones in the morning, tablets in the evening when everybody's on eBay and watching House of Cards or Game of Thrones, etc. Okay, so first part of the strategy is we need to move from this world where it's all about the hardware refresh cycle, the software that sits on it, the software assurance programs, the procurement, the architecture, and the refresh cycle, to this world here, where it's actually about an end user. And that end user is used to a device that's probably got more than 120 to 250 applications on it. No, that's not their PC, that's their phone. And those applications, by the way, update automatically. And they update sometimes 4 times a month. Some applications might update every day. It's a very different world to the world of Microsoft Office when I was working for Microsoft myself 6 years ago, where you got a service pack every 3 months, and you got an upgrade every 3 years, and you only had 20 or a dozen or 20 applications on your PC. And that user works in totally different modes. We've already been around the room, and most of the people in this room read email in bed in the morning. And they catch up on the train on the way to work. So they're not working 9 to 5 in the office. In fact, a lot of the things that they were doing in 9 to 5 in the office, they're now doing pre and post, which then frees up time in the office to do other things like collaborate with people. Okay, the second thing is we need to move beyond the conversation. So we've got a platform inside of HP which is called In-Context Analytics. It's a plugin for Skype for Business. And what it does is it actually analyzes the conversation that you're having. It works both with typed conversations, so chats, as well as voice conversations. And then it searches using our autonomy product. It searches for the answers for those conversations. So you have a separate window, almost like a screen share, that comes up next to the chat window. And if I ask you, what's the latest market research on Skype for Business adoption in Asia Pacific and Japan, it would come up with all of the internal intranet articles on that competitive analysis. So, and that's what I mean by moving beyond the conversation. It's not just about connecting people. I'll have a conversation with you. It's about, well, if I asked you a question, you would now go and have to do a search or come up with your insight, etc. It's doing that for you automatically. So think beyond just connecting people together. So you absolutely should be thinking about, how do you remove latency? How do I connect procurement to legal, to HR, to marketing, to sales, to development? But also, what information are they going to need, and how do I reduce the latency to get that information and that insight into the conversation? Okay, so this was a banking slide. But imagine the world where a user can come in, and it doesn't matter which mode they interact with your company, you have all of the information about them. So they're a banking customer, You meet them, you happen to be a mobile lender. This actually happened to me. I met a mobile lender in the emergency room of Westmead. My daughter had had an accident, and 2 months later, she organized a remortgage of our house. It was 2 months because she didn't know anything about me. But imagine she had at to hand all of the information about me because I was a customer, and she could get that information there and then, and could actually start getting insight and getting me insight about them. Okay, so I'm down to 23 seconds. This is the last step in the strategy, and it really is about thinking beyond the organization. Wearables are a thing, believe it or not. And they are going to be in the enterprise. Right now, 99% of wearables is consumer, 1% is in the enterprise. But if you can get information to people on the device that they need, when they need it, again, just removing that latency and thinking about that information that you can get to them. So my time's up, so I'm just going to go through the strategic steps. The first thing that you want to do is look at a user-centric architecture. That means not just a technology architecture, although connectivity is key to that, and come and speak to the guys on the stand about our Skype for Business switches that do the QoS, etc. automatically, the software-defined networking that we put in place. But it's also about engaging experiences for your users, for your partners, for your customers. And that means looking at your governance. How do you do procurement? Is it CapEx, budget, procurement, or is it very agile rather than waterfall? Is it OpEx, using cloud and DevOps and continuous integration? And then that's the last step, is that continuous integration. Nobody is going to be able to change the culture of an organization. I would imagine nobody in this room is going to be able to change the culture of an organization overnight. So the way to do it is pretty much like the way that we brought Wi-Fi in back in 2003 when I was at a conference exactly like this, trying to tell people about the benefits of putting Wi-Fi in their networks, in their corporate networks. Who remembers those days? Like, who'd have thought? Right? You have to sell me on the benefits of Wi-Fi, and we had actual calculations that showed that you could, improve user productivity and everything else. We had a slight problem with the fact that web was pretty poor security. But what turned that corner? Well, what turned the corner was that people started refreshing their laptops, and the laptops already had Wi-Fi in it, and they went and bought a $70 access point and put it in at home, and they all had Wi-Fi at home, and then they came back to the business and said, there's real business benefit here, and they drove the change of that culture. And I think Skype for Business is like that as well. Everybody's using it at home. They've got that technology at home, so leverage that. And do these continuous integration pilots and POCs. Okay, move beyond the conversation. Think about the valuable insight that you can get, and think about architecting solutions that will give you valuable insights into those conversations. How do you connect people not only to each other, but to the information that they need? And then the last one is think beyond the company. Who are your partners? Who are your suppliers? Who are your vendors? Can you benefit from federating your Skype for Business with those organizations as well? And think about the touch points of those organizations, because the touch point, the customer-facing touch point is not just sales. Customer-facing touch point is also legal. It's also HR for recruitment. It's also marketing. It's also, so if those touch points can be collaborating with Skype for Business externally, then Bob's your uncle. All right, so that's my favorite quote, and he did actually say this. He was a physicist and a science fiction author who wrote Space Odyssey 2001, which everybody remembers. And when you think about that, when I think about the fact that my 17-year-old can pick up her phone and talk to her grandfather in England, face to face, virtually for free, that's magic. You think about the brain power that went into all those processes and those networks and those agreements and the video codecs and the audio codecs. That's magic. You can literally talk to people, and you can bring that magic into your business. There we go. So I'm Rog42 on the interwebs. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry I went over time. I don't believe we've got time for any questions, but I will be standing just outside this room or at the HP stand if you do want to call me and have a chat.